called to order, and we will begin by having a roll call, please, Mrs. Lockman.
Here. 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 Hudson.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Butley. Stein.
Here.
Anderson. Here. Gonzalez. Here.
Let's all rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Board members, you have all received your copy of the minutes in your packet that referred to the regular meeting of March 17th and also the special meeting that was March 31st. And are there any additions or corrections to either of those two sets of minutes? Having none, I would entertain a motion for approval. So moved. Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Yes. Thomas. Yes. Carroll. Yes. Hudson.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Stein.
Yes.
Anderson. Yes. Gonzalez. Yes.
You've also received the financial reports as listed on your agenda, the fund status, treasurer's report, cash requirements, the blue and white cafeteria report, and the statement of the bond fund. Are there any additions or corrections or questions about any of those statements? If not, we'll entertain a motion for approval.
Second.
Second? Second. Roll call, please.
Yes. Thomas. Yes. Carroll. Yes. Hudson.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Stein.
Yes.
Anderson. Yes. Gonzalez. Yes.
Board members, at this point in the program, I'm going to ask that you would excuse Dr. Glenn and myself. We're going down front to make a little change in the agenda this evening for a presentation, and we'll be back to continue shortly. On behalf of the Board of Directors and the Administration, I want to offer all of you a warm welcome this evening. And I believe the evening that we have planned for you will be both informational and enlightening. And we have put some things together for you tonight to give you some more understanding of what's happening in our district. In fact, I attended the taxpayers meeting last week, and as I looked around the room, I could sense that there were obviously quite a few of you who have never either been to a board meeting before, or it's been quite a while since you've been to one. And it might do us well tonight to break from the normal tradition, so I suggested to Dr. Glennon that maybe this is the time that we should step back, take part of his time in the superintendent's report, and address the audience. This is an unusual thing in a board meeting, but I believe that it's important because you people have taken the time to come out and express your interest, and we want to respond to that interest tonight and try to give you all the information we possibly can about a number of items. What I would like to do tonight is to do that in a couple of different ways. We're going to change the agenda a little bit, and at the beginning I'm going to give you some information about the board itself and how it operates and try to get you on board with a couple of thoughts on what happens here. You don't see us, but what happens down at that administration building on a regular basis. And then I have asked Dr. Glennon to do something a little different too, because I know you're here tonight for, I think, two purposes. One is you're concerned about your taxes, and I believe you're also concerned about the value of the West York educational program. What's in it? What's happening there? So that you can better evaluate and understand what is going on in the schools. Some of you may not have had contact with the school system for some time. So I've asked Dr. Glennon to spend some time to talk about the objectives, goals of the district, and then I have asked him to introduce the principals of the elementary, junior high, and senior high, and ask them to tell you just briefly what are some of the highlights that are happening right now in the district. And I think you will gain a lot from that understanding. Then I would like to get into the budget itself. We changed this in the format. Normally we would do this during the action items when the audience is not participating. I have moved that up so that you will have the benefit of going through the details of the budget. So that will be part of Dr. Glennon's program, where he will turn it over to Mr. Allman, our business manager, and he will go through the details. We did this at a work session a week and a half ago, and a handful of you were there. But because there's so many interested parties tonight, we thought that that would be a good time to give you the details of what's happening, where the changes are, and what's taking place in that particular, in our budget for this coming year. And then following Dr. Glennon's report, I am going to kind of move into what is on the agenda called Other Matters. And at that point, I would like to address specific issues that have been presented to the board. I will do them as honestly as I can. You won't agree with everything I say. I won't know the answer to everything that you ask at this particular point in time, but we will do our best to address them. And there are quite a number of those issues. And then what we will do is turn it over to you people for your comment. We've set this program up tonight. We've set the room up. We offer you, we'll be here till midnight if you want us to, so you have a chance to say what you have to say. And we'll talk about how that works in just a few minutes. So that's the program that we would have tonight. And then after the comment time, we will kind of go back to our normal thing. It's sometimes a little boring, but we'll go back to it. Go through the motions and the normal business that takes place in the school board meeting. But we wanted you to have the benefit of the presentation and the budget so that when comment time comes, you have the benefit of those in making your comments. Okay? So let me begin with my part. And what I wanted to do tonight is that I'm sure tonight's probably the first time that many of you have seen our board members. If you can't read the name tags, come down a little later and take a look at them. I will say that tonight we are missing Mr. Rutledge, who is out of town on business. Harry Rutledge is normally here. And there are a couple other faces that you might, some of you I know recognize, Dr. Miller, our assistant superintendent, our chief in charge of curriculum, and many other things. And we are fortunate to have her in our service. And Jeff Altman, our business manager, who we work with the budget. Mrs. Lockman, who's our secretary of the board, and Attorney Ralph Hawkow, who's our solicitor. So I can just tell you that we've got a good group of people here that you've elected, and I assure you that they spend the time getting into and dealing with the issues that are put before them. Now, I will make one aside comment. We don't have an ideal board member up there tonight. I heard one time the definition of an ideal board member is someone that has two features. They have gray hair and hemorrhoids. And I kind of stood back and I said, well, the gray hair gives them a look of distinction, and the hemorrhoids put on their face a look of real concern. They're really into that. So we don't have any up there, but maybe we have some in the audience tonight, and we can look forward to having you on there sometime. Let me get into my part, and that is to talk about the board itself and what we do and how we operate. I hope that you all picked up this little pamphlet when you came in. If you would refer to that right now, I will just make a couple comments. Obviously, you can read it. We will be making this also available at every board meeting for anyone who might come in new. You can see sitting around in 5-10 minutes, you can figure out what's happening in this place. And I think that's important for people to understand. What I would like you to do is just turn inside to the first page and list there the name of the school directors. And tonight, of course, you can put a face with the name. If you see them out somewhere, you can make comments. Yes, and would you raise your hand if you don't have one? Mr. Schimmel and Mr. Stewart are coming down with some. There's some down here. Down here, Mr. Schimmel, a couple right in here. And Mr. Stewart's coming down on that. Mr. Schimmel right behind you there. Okay? Everyone over here? How about over there? While they're passing those out, and there is one way back in the corner, Mr. Stewart, when you get finished down at this end. let me just make a comment about information in general. You'll see on the table up here tonight a number of documents which we will be referring to, and you're very welcome to come down and look through them. We have a number of documents, from plans, long-range plans, to policy manuals, different kinds of documents that we thought you might be interested to know what's going on and how organized we believe the district is in terms of approaching the educational system. Everyone have one now? Okay. If you will turn it to the inside, it talks about the school board's role and what we specifically are charged to do. I would just focus on one thing. On the top of that second page, you see it says to establish policies for operations of the schools. Let me make a comment there and just say to you that there's a misunderstanding sometimes about school board members. We do not run the district. We are not in schools and administering duties. We set policies, and those black manuals, there are 3 sets of them up here, are sets of policy manuals. Our role was to set a policy from which the administration then can take and carry that out. And you would be interested, and later on, after our business is finished, we have to depart for a little personnel session, and while we're going, you may come down and take a look at them, and I wish you would, because you'll see in there some of the detail of what goes on behind the district. So outside of this room tonight, the board member's authority is as much as yours. We do not do anything outside the action that takes place here tonight. So we don't run the district, and we want to make sure you understood that. We're just another taxpayer. Turn to the page, if you would, please, and on the right-hand side where it says at the top, procedures for addressing the board. There's 2 things I want to focus on, addressing the board and getting information. And addressing the board, first of all, the Sunshine Law, which is the law that was passed to make sure that you people had the right to do what you're doing tonight. And that is that you're entitled to come out here and listen and attend a board meeting. According to the law, you are not entitled to participate. But what we have done is that we have established a procedure, policy, whereby there's a section of time in our agenda every meeting that we have, whereby you can come forward and make a statement about a concern or whatever you want to talk about. And then we go back from that and we get into our meeting, and then you're an observer again. You were passed out, one of the handouts tonight was a policy, 1120 it was called, and that states the details of how we can talk in public. And in fact, I'd like to make a comment. Thursday a week ago, there was an article, an editorial in the morning paper. It was talking about public meetings in general and how we need to expand the role of the public in those meetings. And it went on to say about that some school districts require people to make a 7 to 10 day notice to the board before they can appear and present something. And they said, for example, West York adopted one of these policies. That was absolutely untrue. You have the policy in front of you that was set up 5 years ago, and if anyone's been to a board meeting, you will know that every meeting we invite people to speak. And I just wanted to make that part very clear. The other item that I would mention to you of interest, and that is that how do you get information? If you would like to review a piece of information about the district, because much of the information, most of the information in the district is public. It's for you. Not everything. Certain things like personnel issues that are very private are not for general disposition. So what we have done is set up a procedure whereby if you have an interest in a piece of information, you put it in writing to the superintendent of schools, Dr. Glennon. He reviews it to make sure that we're legally okay to give it to you. He may have to talk to the solicitor or to a resource to find that out. Then he will assign someone to get that information to you and turn it around in a reasonable time. And that is his assignment to do that. So I think that what we can see from that is that the board is not very complicated. You'll see tonight some of the operations that we do, but it has to be very specific because of the nature of the record keeping and the legal things that we're subjected to. When we read, for example, the motions and those types of things, they just have to be done that way. That's part of the process. So that's it for my part. I'd like to turn over to Dr. Glennon now to do the beginning part of the superintendent's report.
This is is an excellent opportunity to meet with people in the community of the West York Area School District. If you've had the opportunity to visit other districts and compare West York with other school districts, I think that you'll find the board of directors, the administration, the teachers, the facilities, the ability to defray the cost of public education is really right where it should be. I think it's a pretty fine district, and I'm really glad to see you here this evening. Thank you for taking time and visiting with us. When I was in school, University of Pittsburgh, not that many years ago, I had the fortune to study under Richard Wynn. He was a premier business consultant. As a matter of fact, one of his final duties was to tour Australia and to meet with Australian business people and really train them in business practices. And he was a student of Peter Drucker, who's the father of MBOs. They worked together with Dick Wynn, was a school board member in New Jersey. That course, Management Theory, helped prepare me for becoming a superintendent of schools about as much as any course I had taken. The other factor that helped prepare me to be a superintendent of schools was really, I've been fortunate over the years to work with some tremendous boards of education and some terrific presidents. Getting ready for this meeting turned out to be a real exciting chore. Sure, it meant Saturday, Holy Saturday, meant Good Friday, meant Easter Monday. However, working with Bob Miller, getting ready for tonight's meeting just made the adrenaline flow. I know he's a former class president and probably learned about setting up meetings early in life, which carried over to Bucknell. However, he's also a former high school quarterback. And believe me, I'd play this guy's team any day. Thanks for giving me the ball, Bob. In addition to Peter Drucker, Tom Peters, who wrote In Search of Excellence, talked about successful organizations. And I like to think that West York School District is a successful organization. Both have pointed out in their publications on effective management practices. Successful organizations must develop a sense of direction and vision that only can be developed by those who see the larger picture. Business folks, parents, taxpayers, school boards, and children. The larger picture includes teenage pregnancy, single-parent families, poor nutrition and health care, crime, alcohol and drug abuse. All these things have substantial negative influences on a child's ability to become ready to learn and subsequently do well in school. The management team tonight, the board who sets policy, and the administrators who implement that policy, really welcome the chance to share some of the many fine things, some of the positive aspects, I believe, that are occurring in your school district. Together we have a mission to share. And one of your handouts includes this particular mission. I'd like to read it to you at this time. We subscribe to a philosophy of education that encompasses the development of the student's intellectual, social, physical, and personal qualities. We recognize that the learning process takes place within the individual. It is our mission to structure the educational environment so that we will motivate all students to fulfill their learning potential. We recognize that each student is special and the staff must provide for individual differences. Intellectual needs and capabilities may vary. However, personal and social attributes ensure that an individual shall participate competently in a democratic society. Further, we embrace the national educational goals, the state educational goals, the district educational goals, and district management goals. These goals are available for your review in the handouts this evening. They also prepare in a very colorful chart. They appear in 80 businesses throughout the fine communities of West York and West Manchester Township. What do we do with these goals after we've established them? And the board did establish the goals that it has provided the direction for this school district. Administrators, beginning with the superintendent of schools, teachers and children, and hopefully the community, are aware of the goals. It doesn't end at that point. Establishing goals is a fine idea. However, measuring how well you do against those standards is something else. And the State Board of Education has prescribed that once every 5 years, every school district should submit to the Department of Education a long-range, and this year it's a strategic plan. We're participating in a pilot version according to criteria established by the Secretary of Education. I'm proud to report, by the way, that long-range planning had begun with a different slant. At one time, it focused mostly on demographics and buildings. But 1980, there was a new approach, and subsequently it's been revised to strategic long-range planning, which is a much more flexible process. But I'm pleased to report West York School District was the first in Pennsylvania with the new trend in planning to have it approved and become a registered school district. And in the bulletin, the little publication that Mr. Miller referred to, you will note we are a registered district. It is a form of accreditation. But at any rate, each school district's planning process includes establishment of general operational goals, a district-wide database needs assessment process, synthesizing priority goal areas, preparations of specific practical action plans to effect positive changes in identified goal areas, and lastly, formative and summative evaluation of the results through implementation of action plans. We developed those action plans with the help of 70 community people at our building levels about 2 years ago, and they were subsequently incorporated into the long-range strategic plan approved by the local Board of Education and subsequently the Department of Education. Let's go over those goals right now. There are 5. I think President Bush would be proud of us because we did this in sync with his approach to improving education in the United States. In West York, I think we're on the right track. There are 5 that pertain to the management of this school district, our school district. 1, staffing. Employ, supervise, and improve the effectiveness of the educational staff and others to ensure the best education possible. Facilities. Ensure that all district facilities are used to maximize educational programs and services. Planning and assessment. Provide for educational planning and program assessment at all instructional levels. Budgeting. Ensure responsible use of resources available to address educational goals to meet district needs. Community relations. Foster cooperation between the schools and all segments of the community. Again, you have the mission statement and the goals, and you probably have seen them in some of the fast food restaurants, the supermarkets, many of the businesses that support this school district, and I know that you also support. This evening we share with you several important sources used by the planners in developing the long-range strategic plan. Mr. Miller referred to some of them. In front of the auditorium, we have placed copies of the analysis of demographics and community growth and projections of public school enrollments in the West York Area School District. Pennsylvania Economy Lead Study, October 1988. The annual report to the Board of Directors. This is something that evolved out of a self-evaluation of the board about 5 or 6 years ago. The annual financial report that we submit annually to the Pennsylvania Department of Education. District policy manuals, which are probably some of the most comprehensive manuals that you will find. And the policy manual is continuous. You'll see policy back to the 1970s. You'll see policies revised as recently as 1991. It is a flexible kind of a document. We have a model set of policies. Many school districts request our policies when they contract with the different associations, organizations, consultants to develop policy manuals. Please look at them. Much of the information that I have been asked to provide just recently, it's just a matter of coming in, going through our policy manual, make the photostatic copy, and you're welcome to it. We want to share it with you. The long-range strategic plan for the years 1990 to 1995, also available for you to review. And we ask that these publications stay here. If there's any information in the publications that you would like, we'd be happy to arrange for photostatic copies. For any group, we charge 6 cents a page. And that's just because of the additional cost in paper and in preparation of the documents. On behalf of this district, we welcome inquiries. We certainly welcome your ideas and your suggestions. If you want any of this information that you see tonight, please call the board secretary, and she will make arrangements to accommodate your needs. The cooperation among the taxpayers, school staff, and board is needed to fulfill the mission and to accomplish district goals. If we're going to do a cost-benefit analysis across educational and social spending programs and the possible reallocation of funds, then we could improve our return on investment. We have to do more as a community. We have to do community-based kinds of activities in order to address those areas that schools really were never made to be accountable for. I mentioned some of them earlier: the teenage pregnancy, single-parent families, the lack of child care, poor nutrition. The list goes on and on. All factors that contribute to the performance of students. One of our presenters tonight is going to talk about an investment, and we're investing in the earliest learners in the school district because we realize through research that if you get children by grade 3 and provide the appropriate intervention, you reduce learning problems substantially. It's proven that the dropout rate declines significantly, and you just have a more quality student throughout the program K through 12. Our current building project is a prototype. Sure, we had to do it because of deferred maintenance, because of population growth, and the Pennsylvania Economy Study will verify that. More importantly, we restructured in line with President Bush to do things differently. And we've got a program right now going in this school district where we've got local, regional, state, and possibility of a group coming from England to see what we're doing in West York area school district. We're doing it because we have a facilities plan based upon educational programming. It's theoretical. It's the way it ought to be done. We're doing it. It's one of the reasons I'm proud to be part of this school district. I really am. To be able to stand here and say we have a major building project in this school district based on educational planning, not to accommodate a particular configuration based on what schools are available, or because of strictly where the population resides. This building project, one of the main criteria, the most important ones, it was based on educational planning in addition to an increased population that we're experiencing. We're having a movement, and you see what's going on in the community, and also deferred maintenance. We're taking care of those three things. And I'm pleased to report the main reason you see those buildings, the main reason for that $1.5 million increase last year, $900,000, we doubled debt service because we're providing for the 21st century and the next 40 years of education in this school district. And I'm proud to be part of that. You will also learn of changes from 2 brand new people in very key positions in this school district. The junior high school and the senior high school. It's first year. And I don't care what reform report we read, 2 criteria, 2 factors, 2 variables appear in every report. One is, everyone agrees, early education is very important. Address children's needs at the earliest level of learning. The second factor is building leadership, the school principal. Good principals make great schools. And we have a management team here that I'm proud to work with, and I hope we can retain for a while, because we've got some goals that we want to accomplish in this school district by 1995, and they're going to be key players in that game. A key player in school affairs is the business manager. I always say, Mr. Altman, your job is to see things either black or white. And he does it real well. My job is to handle the gray areas, and that's a little more difficult. However, without the teamwork in this school district and the great supporting cast, this board of directors has provided the superintendent of schools. and it would be difficult to report that honestly to you this evening. As we listen to the budget presentation, keep in mind a finding in the report titled York 2000. Does that sound familiar, Mrs. Harrell? And she's a commission member, by the way. Preserving our quality of life by preparing for the future. A third report to the community, April 5th, 1991. It states, the community continues to look to the schools to solve social problems. While human services provide support to the schools, there are too few in number and resource programs to meet the growing needs of children. Therefore, the burden of dealing with these problems continues to drain the limited resources of school districts and the energies of school personnel. By reviewing the case-loaded activities of just our one elementary guidance counselor for 1,300 students, and I give this report to the board monthly that I get from the district principal, it amazes me the amount of work that's done. Sure, I'd like an additional counselor to help address some of these needs. However, I also realize we're in a recession and that it's just difficult to recommend additional staff. I hope the day comes, though, we do have that second counselor because it is needed because of the social problems that we face in schools today. Unfortunately, this budget delay will influence our progress towards our goals. However, it's something that we'll work towards. And we have a pretty board of directors, and I appreciate their guidance and their wisdom. And I know we do things in this school district. It may take a little longer, but when we do it, it's done right. Now that we know the scope and type of goals for the district, let's discuss tonight how we measure progress toward the achievement of these goals. My pleasure. The establishment of goals is the most valuable guide in the appraisal process for the board, superintendent, administrator, and teacher. Let's start with the board of directors. Hey, if accountability is important, if appraisal is important, some people call evaluation, then let's start with the board. This corporate body, this group, this team, individually, they have no authority. Only when they're in a public meeting, in a public body, then they have authority, and they'll exercise that authority and the corresponding responsibility tonight. The board of directors are taking part in a six-phase evaluation over 2 sessions, 2 evenings, and it deals with these areas of boardmanship: conduct of board meetings, relationship with administrative staff, educational program improvement, the relationship to the personnel function, school, funds and facilities, and community relations. Now, the means for improvement. They may have to change in policy or procedure. Some adaptations were made for this meeting tonight. It shows their flexibility. Need for workshops to improve skills and change behavior. Outside consultants to suggest ways of improving. Creation of focus groups to return with recommendations and suggestions, and set date for a second round to assess progress toward improvement. Once we identify where our weaknesses are, and then address it through policy change, through some workshops, through consultant help, focus groups, whatever it takes. But at any rate, the board is saying, hey, if evaluation is important in this school district, we'll undergo an evaluation. The board by law, again, is a corporate body and is evaluated as such, rather than a collection of individuals. But I will tell you this, these 9 people up here, each of them has something to offer. Each of them has something to offer. When you combine the talents of 9 people, that's synergy. And that can really help us reach our goals when they work together as a unit. And again, these are kinds of things we talk about when the board has evaluation. And by the way, I participate in those evaluations. By law, I am the 10th member of the school board. I'm the 10th member of the board. Do you hear me? I'm number 10 by law. I'm a non-voting member. They appoint me. I am a board member. I have no vote. I serve as their chief executive officer. And part of the job I enjoy, next to getting out to schools and intermingling with teachers, children, and administrators, and meetings like this, getting to really people in this community. People I admire. People have a work ethic. It's just a wonderful place to rear children and to live, primarily because of the people. And I'm really happy we diverted from our meeting tonight. I could get down from that stage, because at meetings, my job is to concentrate the board. We have open meetings in public. We do board business in public. And what I do, I relate to the board. I may appear distant, uncaring, but my job is to deal with the board. Tonight, however, my charge, because of our quarterback board president, is to have this time tonight to really let you know what your superintendent of schools is all about relative to the mission statement and the goals of this school district. How about my evaluation? Hey, if you think that the superintendent of schools in this school district, or probably any other school district, has a situation where accountability is secondary, wrong. I'll tell you, my annual evaluation meetings, I crawl out of that boardroom. It really can be grueling. This year I'm looking forward to it because we have changed the approach. The board president last year appointed a committee of Zambrello, Rutledge, and Hudson, and they came up with a modified goals and objectives approach, an MBO type approach. And I say modified because Drucker would say the problem with MBOs is you get a laundry list, and you get a lot of objectives, and they're easily mastered, and therefore you're supposedly doing a good job. These, you'll see, 18 major objectives. I've shared them with you. You have a copy of my personal objectives for this school year. There are 18 major objectives that relate to our mission statement in those goal areas. And under those 18 major objectives are about 92 various indicators of performance that I'll be measured against. And believe me, it has provided direction for me under the umbrella of the mission statement and the goals. And I'm not going to go over those objectives with you. I did have them approved publicly at the board meeting in October. They're part of the minutes. Also, in our district newsletter, the blue and white, I listed them in the superintendent's column, a summary of them. But tonight, what you have as a handout are the superintendent of schools' personal objectives. And they deal with those 92 performance areas under the 18 major objectives relating to the long-range plan, which includes the mission statement and goals of the school district. What about our principals? Administrators have developed objectives too, to address each of the goals and how they measure up in terms of their target areas to accomplish these goals. And the teachers also have some targets. Now the administrator's goals are like in supervision, clinical supervision, getting into those classrooms, helping teachers improve. And we have a group of teachers that do that well. They also have goals in staff relations, staff development. Hopefully we're doing some in-service kinds of activities to help reach those goals. They're certainly involved with community relations. We are fortunate to have very people-oriented as well as task-oriented principals. And they have responsibilities in budgeting. And I mentioned Drucker, but he's old news. We're talking about Deming now, co-quality management, aren't we? Site-based management, decentralizing, a lot of decisions at the local level. Believe me, it's happening. And those major goals and objectives do relate to what's happening in school site specific instances. Although they're not separate, units, they're under the umbrella of really the district goals. We expect the teachers to concentrate on curriculum improvement, use of technology, and positive school climate. That's also on that colorful chart. That's posted in 8 businesses in this fine school district comprised of 2 wonderful communities in West York and West Manchester Township. Well, what about our administrators? Policies 2480 A through B. It's in the policy manual. You can check it out. And we have our executive session on 3 personnel matters of a confidential nature. Or you can get in touch with Ms. Flogman and we'll let you come in and look over the policy manuals and You can have copies of what you want. But policies 2480 A through B, 2480.1, deal with administrative performance toward goal accomplishments. What does 2480 say? Policy requires goals, development, timeline for goal progress, monitoring, mid-year and end-of-the-year performance appraisal. My job is to implement the procedure and rate the performance. 2480.1 calls for a compensation plan consistent with legislation. Act 93, folks. It's mandated. We have to do this. I'm pleased to report legislators should have stayed out of West York School District's business. We had this provision long before it was legislated. Matter of fact, the first year I came here, we started it. Mentioned Pitt, I also went to West Virginia University and studied under a fine management consultant, and we analyzed self-appraisal processes in about 20 major corporations in the United States. So we started in West York. And here's what it involves. And the compensation plan's up here. The administration compensation plan's up here with an introduction, and it shows various elements, which I'll describe. Anyway, we have a description of the program for determining salaries. We have a salary schedule / range. We list the benefits, which is required in the law. And we have a description of the evaluation process, which, by the way, the administrators have agreed to. Features of administrative appraisal system in West York Area School District. 3 major criteria. Job classification. What's the job score? What's that job worth? Why is one job more important than another in an organization? At least from the standpoint of a classification system. How about market competitiveness? And how about the biggie, performance? Now, the job class is determined by these variables, and we had a management consultant come in and work with the board. The job class, we look at background. What's the education for that job? What's the experience? We look at application of knowledge. What's the complexity of the job? What kind of latitude does that position hold? How about supervisory responsibility, the size, the complexity, the number you evaluate directly, and then how about indirectly that you're responsible for it? How about contacts? What kind of contacts does a person have to have in order to get the job done? Department, with other school districts, with community-based agencies. And how about integrity of information? How important it is in terms of the information these people deal with. And then the time requirement to get the job done. Indicators of performance. We rate our administrators on these indicators. And the description of the indicators is in the Act 93 compensation plan, which is up here, that you can look at later. Indicators of performance. Excellent, above expectations, meets expectations, meets minimal expectations, and not up to job standards. Now, what are the criteria we look for in measuring people and assigning that label to them? Leadership, knowledge, communication skills, human relations skills, goals, such as supervision, staff development, community relations, budgeting. And then how about the job description, job analysis? That's good to have, to see how well they measure up. I have high school principals here, and normally this would be confidential information. However, I'll just share it. I picked this out. I said, this is Waldman. Preparing for tonight. Pick me anyone. Get me an NGO. So I have the high school principals. Target area, number 1. Every principal knows this is the biggie. And it's the one that I look at first in evaluating performance. Clinical supervision. What are you doing to improve instruction? What are you doing in those classrooms to help teachers become better teachers? And that way influence a lot of people who can influence a lot of children. All right, let's look at clinical supervision. We'll use here clinical supervision, budgeting, staff relations, educational leadership, community relations. Clinical supervision. Here are her objectives. To have each teacher establish performance goals for improvement of instruction. To add to teachers' knowledge of instructional techniques. To increase the number of times that classroom teachers are observed during the teaching process. How's she going to do this? To focus on identified goal areas as each teacher is observed. See, this year in the high school they've developed goal areas. Resource persons will present programs on instructional techniques. To initiate walk-through observations. That was a term I was trying to think of the other day when we were talking, Dick. Walk-through observations. Anybody can put a good show on if they know it's planned. She walks through. I like that. To meet with to regular classroom, peer-long observations, to meet with department heads early in the budgeting process, to discuss budgeting needs and how those needs affect the entire secondary budget. Resources constraints, time constraints, teacher cooperation, cooperation with the department heads, Jack Frank, Dr. Diane Johnson, in-service, cooperative learning. Need to look at elective programs. Evaluation. How's she going to measure how well she has done in that primary target area when she comes out to meet with Dr. Miller and me? Well, she's going to have written observations. We're going to look at the number and how well they're written and how they relate to those goals and the target areas that the teacher has established. She'll get feedback from the teacher. Self-appraisal is important. We know if we're doing something well or if we're not. And administrator's observations, administrator judgment. She's trained. Probably taken 12 hours in monitoring successful classroom practices. And feedback from other people. That's just one. And I hope it was all right to share that, Dr. Wright. Because you're doing a good job. I want these people to know it. Synopsis. I borrowed from DuPont Corporation a little form. And it just summarizes things. And I asked the principals at the end of the year, give me your major accomplishments, your additional accomplishments, what constraints you face, and support needed. Once I find those constraints out, or the board finds those constraints out, we can do something to help that person help others. And then any contingency that came along the way that maybe impaired performance that could have been an act of nature. All right, how about evaluation of teachers? Remember, one of the fine things about West York Area School District is the staff. We've got a solid staff. Sure, every organization has your lead dogs. Every organization has a big group in the middle. And every organization has some that really need improvement. And you may even have a couple that are really in need of improved teaching behaviors. But at any rate, our job is to get that middle group into that above average column and place a lot of emphasis on them. And then if there are some that really need improvement, target that individual or those individuals. And with improvement of instruction in mind, make that our foremost concern. However, if after all else fails, we have to take more serious action, we are prepared to do that. A minimum, according to policy 4117, new teachers, non-tenured teachers the first 2 years of teaching, we get in a minimum of 4 times per year, minimum. 3 years of experience or more, minimum 2 years. Marginal performers, unlimited, mobile raters. And that doesn't include the walk-arounds or the walk-throughs. First level supervisors help with the evaluation process. These are subject area specialists. Principals, primary responsibility as I described earlier. And even the superintendent of schools. MVWA, management walking around. Teachers are in this audience. Teachers in this audience. Superintendent of schools at least 3 times a week. I'm out in these buildings, in the classrooms. And everyone gets a written report of that visit. Is that right, Jim? Observers. First level supervisors, principals, superintendent, and if we have a marginal performer, we bring other central office administrators in. If there's somebody we want to really take a look at. Policy 4117. 2 types of evaluation of teachers. Process evaluation, and we use a district form for this. We look at the classroom environment, we look at the activities occurring in that environment, and then we come up with comments, suggestions, and recommendations. Now, we use a clinical supervision model where we try at pre-conference, we have target areas developed ahead of time, get in the classroom, make the observations. Following that observation, we have a post-observation conference, and as a result of that post-observation conference, it may be important to change the target area. That's the model we use. That's the most important method of evaluation. The other type is called product evaluation. It's in accordance with the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And there's a rating system, and it deals with these main descriptors: personality, preparation, technique, and reaction. And there are various instances of successful teaching under these criteria. And the procedure we use official rating card, which requires my approval, and we submit it to the Department of Education. We have to rate a minimum of once a year using this form, but if we have to, we use it more than once. We give due consideration to intellectual level of students and learning and behavioral problems over which the teacher may or may not have control. And on satisfactory rating, and we do give them required anecdotal records, a copy of the rating shall really be provided to the teacher. It's no option. We make sure the teacher gets the original, we keep the copy. Before you hear from our next speaker, really our next group of speakers, please remember, dollar bills don't educate students. Education depends on committed communities determined to be places where learning will flourish, committed teachers free from the non-educational burdens, committed parents determined to support excellence, committed students excited about school and learning. We made a good beginning by setting sights on 5 ambitious goals for the West York Area School District, and setting for our target the year 1995. Our goals have been forged in partnership with the community, several of whom are with us here tonight in this auditorium. And for those who need a refresher course, it's my pleasure to introduce our district elementary principal, Dr. Kenneth K. Qualiter, who will be followed by the junior high principal, the senior high principal, and then Mr. Altman with his budget report that is really an educational document, because between the covers of that budget is really our educational program. Dr. Qualiter.
5 minutes. 5 minutes, please.
When I got the phone call asking me to highlight something that I was extremely proud of in West York Area School District, a number of things came to mind. I'm ready to start my 5th year, and I'm very, very proud of the West York Area School District. I entered the school district knowing that you had a reputation and a tradition of excellence, and I was very, very pleased with the staff that I inherited. Over the last 5 years, because of retirements, leaves, and attrition, and the fact that we've added over 200 students at the elementary level, I've been able to enhance that staff with some new people. Last year, we had 1,200 applicants for elementary teaching positions. From those 1,200 people, we were able to garner Student Teachers of the Year, Departmental Honor winners, Magna Cum Laude graduates, and they have meshed very well with the existing staff. And so that was one thing I was very proud of. I was very proud of the fact that 3 years ago, with Dr. Glennon and Dr. Miller's assistance, Lou Stewart's assistance, and the board's okay, we started an instructional support team. You're starting to see press where other districts have officially started their instructional support team. It's law now. 3 years ago, before it was law, we started it because we're here to educate children. We were able to reduce the number of retentions and the number of children needing special education services. I'm extremely proud of that. I'm extremely proud of Dr. Miller's assistance in the area of technology and putting technology into our curriculum, and that remains a major goal for the next 5 years, but we are well underway in being very, very successful in that area as well. Dr. Glennon referenced that the most important thing at this point in the elementary program is the developmental education program. If the West York Area School District was in the Navy, if it was a ship, it would be an aircraft carrier. Those of you who know anything about ships know that you don't turn an aircraft carrier on a dime. This developmental education program started back in the mid-'80s, and it's a result of many hours and many years of study by the board and teachers. I came in at the tail end of it, and I'm very thankful to have been a small part of it. It's a true example of teamwork. It was the basis of our building project and our staff development program. We're starting our 3rd year of actually having it in the classrooms, and I'm pleased to announce that the staff and the parents widely support it. The basic premise is that learning is based on readiness, not aptitude. And we have done a fine job, according to our test results, in maintaining that tradition of excellence that's synonymous with West York Area School District. Our children are taking academic tests that we have given in the past, and they are surpassing the past results. This year, our first graders, halfway through the year, took tests from the Basal Reading Series and came out 16 percentage points ahead in comprehension. To those of you who are not educators, that's a phenomenal score to get almost 200 first graders scoring that far ahead of previous year's classes. And the previous year's scores were fine. They were in the upper half of the nation. So our test results are indicating success. The future looks bright for the program. You're starting to hear lots about learning outcome education. Here again, West York was a leader because the developmental program is based on learning outcomes. It's based on critical thinking and enhancing those skills, and on enhancing student self-esteem. We're very, very happy that it's been successful in those areas. Over 25 school districts have visited, some more than once. Today I got a call from Harry Wax from England. He presented it over there. The school district is ready to come over and take a look at the program. We have not gone public with it. Any interest that was generated in other school districts has strictly been word of mouth. It's good news. It's good news for our district and for our children, for our staff. And I, for one, know I speak for the students and staff when I thank the board for their support and their direction. Thank you. Mrs. Farbaugh.
I promise only 5 minutes. When I thought, what Ken said about 5 years ago, I thought about just a year ago, and what I want to share right off the bat was I didn't really expect to come here as a junior high principal, but it was really a dream come true. And many of you may not know about the scenario, and I won't get into it because I take more than 5 minutes, but I really wanted to work with the junior high school, and many people would say if you have 12 or 13-year-olds right now, or if you've had 12 or 13-year-olds in your home, you might think we're all crazy to want to work at that middle level, but it's really an exciting time, and it really is a great opportunity for me. Just very briefly, as Dr. Glennon had said earlier, many of you may have been out of touch with the school system in a direct fashion, so just quickly to refresh your memory about what happens in a junior high school, we are really there to bridge and create the transition between the elementary and the secondary programs. And very briefly this evening, I'd like to share some of the activities that help to create that bridge between the elementary and the secondary programs. I'd like to tie in with what Dr. Glennon had said and Ken about the configuration. I really strongly believe, and again, one of the reasons I was impressed with choosing to come to West York was the configuration of the junior high school. If you know anything about this age group, they are really an age group that needs a lot of academic, emotional, and social support. The school really lends itself in structure to that. Right now we have 360 students in grades 7 and 8. It's a small community, and a part of the transition is providing a very supportive atmosphere for the students. With that size, and also again referring back to perhaps your own experience, 7th and 8th graders, I believe, are really pretty equally matched in terms of their social and emotional needs. So it's a really good, positive, healthy environment for the students. We start really the transition for the 6th graders into 7th grade actually in March of the year. And this March, Linda Shook, our guidance counselor, has made 2 visits, one to Martin and one to Trimmer. And during those visits have presented the 6th grade students with course guide information and sheets that the students can take home and discuss with parents. In addition, we're working very closely in conjunction with the 6th grade teachers and guidance counselors at the elementary schools to begin preparations of students for academic placement next year. I would also say that that takes care of the academic need. When we look again that these students really have social and emotional needs, we're going to start taking care of those on May 12th, and the 6th grade will visit us, Martin in the morning and Trimmer in the afternoon, and during those times they'll have a chance to get some basic information, but primarily tour the building when classes are in session. We'll have the band and the choir there, And it's the beginning of making those students feel comfortable from leaving the smaller elementary school, coming into the first time in a secondary program. That transition continues over the summer. August 24th of this year, in the evening, parents and students are invited to the junior high for an evening orientation. Teachers come back voluntarily, the 7th grade teachers for that program, and they are in the homeroom so that our 6th grade students going into 7th grade even have an opportunity prior to the beginning of school to really get to know their teachers. We've started for the first time last year a transition program for new students to the district. If any of you have ever perhaps never lived in York County originally and moved in, you may know what some of the students are facing that are coming to us not having been in the elementary program. So we have a little pizza party for them, and also Mrs. Shook does some pictures and has those on display in the lobby so that our students that are in the district can get to know those people. Finally, as the year goes on, we continue to monitor the academic, social, and emotional needs of students. In those very first weeks of school, we are constantly working, teachers, guidance counselors, and are also going back and checking in with elementary people to make sure that we have our students placed where they're going to succeed, whether that means moving a student to a higher academic level or perhaps an academic level that would best suit their needs. We're doing that constantly in the first few weeks of school. One program that really helps, again, with the social and emotional adjustment through the year is the Student Assistance Team, which really is an organized effort of teachers, school nurses, and key personnel that help with any student that might be in a crisis or needs some emotional support. One final activity I'd like to share with you that was really begun last year through the coordination and facilitation of Dr. Plowwitter and Dr. Rupp was a program that we have for staff, again, to help ensure that we are making the transition and the bridge between our elementary and our secondary programs. Basically, last year, the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers met to discuss curriculum coordination, testing, some at-risk academic students. This year, with the coordination of the three of us, we included the 9th grade teachers in that program, and it provides, again, for what the three of us are working for, consistent monitoring, transitions, and cooperations between those levels. I am probably the person, some people would say caught in the middle, but I enjoy being in the middle. I think Dr. Rupp's going to fill you in on some secondary programs.
Good evening. I feel fortunate to be able to share with you this evening some of the really good things that are happening in the high school, and some really good things are occurring because I'm very fortunate to have a really great group of people to work with, and that makes my job real easy. Effective Schools research says that there are certain qualities that make a school a good school, or make a school an outstanding school, or make a school an effective school. We're striving at the high school to incorporate some of those qualities into our program so that we are a good school or a better school. One of the qualities that Effective Schools research says is necessary at the high school level, at any school level, is you need to have a positive school climate. By climate, I don't mean that we need to have 70 degrees and feel real comfortable. By that, I mean we need to have a positive atmosphere. Kids need to feel good about themselves before they can do well in their schoolwork. So the faculty and I have done a few little things that I think have really contributed strongly or contributed to a positive school climate in the high school. They're very small things, but sometimes it's the small things that make things really click and make things work together. A group of faculty and I worked on changing our report card comments so that when parents receive report cards, they see positive things about their students. We have so many good kids in the West York School District, and we feel it's important that we emphasize the qualities of all of these good students that we currently have. So we've changed the report card comments to reflect positively to parents. Another small change that we've made, but I feel it's an important change, is our midterm progress reports. When you or I were in school, the only progress reports our parents got were the report cards that came every 6 weeks or came every 9 weeks. We do something a little extra now in most of our schools. We send a midterm progress report. So midway through the 9 weeks, parents receive some information about how their child is doing. In the past, this midterm progress report was sent to reflect only children who were receiving poor grades, D's or F's, or on their way to failure. We felt it was important to change those midterm progress reports to, again, reflect some positive comments so parents know the good things that their kids are doing, because, as I said, we have so many good kids in the West York School District. I'm proud to report that as of our last sending home and midterm reports, our ratio was 60 to 40. We had 60% good comments going home and only 40% negative, or 40% indicating that children were failing or not doing well in their academics. Another small change that we're incorporating in the high school is that teachers are encouraged to send home positive comments to parents in the form of little postcards. Very simple little thing, but I know of some parents who've received them, and that postcard has gone right up there in the refrigerator while the real important stuff in your household goes. So we're real proud about that effort. We found that if you emphasize positiveness and you look for good things, you find good things, and then that makes our whole atmosphere a whole lot better. It makes kids feel real good about themselves, and when you feel good about yourself, you want to succeed and you want to do better. So that's one of the big things that we have been pushing here at high school. Another quality or another factor that Effective Schools research says is necessary in an effective school is that you must teach students at the level that they need to be reached at. In other words, you need to find education that is relevant, and you need to teach them what they need at that level. We've done some revisions of some of our curriculum areas, and I'd like to report to you just a little bit of progress on those. One of the ones that we tackled was physical education. And you might think, physical education, when you or I were in school, you went to phys ed class and threw out the ball, you played a couple of games, and you tried to duck out taking a shower. And that was pretty much the extent of physical education. Well, with all the research in every magazine that I pick up, and I'm sure every magazine that you pick up, it talks about having exercise, getting in some sort of a routine or making exercise a part of your life. We feel it's our responsibility here at the school to incorporate that into their lives. It's important that kids learn or adapt or find some exercise that they enjoy that they can do for the rest of their life, because it proves that you're going to have a longer life if you incorporate exercise into your lifestyle. So that has been an emphasis in rewriting our physical education curriculum this year, so that many of our activities are singular activities. Kids learn some skills with golfing, they learn to play tennis, they learn archery, as well as throwing the ball out, and maybe learn to play some basketball, learn to play some volleyball for fun. Another area, another area that we have taken a real good look at, a long look as a matter of fact, is our business education department. We haven't jumped into some revisions there, we've really done a complete study. If you read in the Sunday newspaper just this past week, they talked about schools and businesses needing to form partnerships. Well, we haven't formed an official partnership with many businesses, but 2 years ago, when we were beginning to take a look at our business education department and taking a look at our courses, one of the very first things we thought we better find out is, what are the businesses looking for out there in the kind of student that we produce? What are the skills that are necessary? What are some of the hardware that they need to be able to be familiar with to be competitive out there in the job market when they graduate from this high school? So we did a survey of businesses. We surveyed graduates. What didn't you learn that you needed to learn once you get out there in the job market? So that when we went to do this revision, we wanted to do the best possible thing for our West York students. So as a result of surveying graduates and a result of surveying businesses, we did a complete revision of our business education department, incorporating into that department, making sure that our students will have a back and forth communication with businesses so they really know what's happening out there, so that when they graduate, they can really be competitive in that job market. We're also proud to report that we have established a state-of-the-art computer lab here in the high school, so that our kids are familiar with what is out there in the businesses. And that was new this year. This year we had 3 classes in the lab, and we recently had kids sign up for courses for next year, and next year the lab is full. So kids know that these skills and technology are really important for them, and they're taking advantage of the fine facilities that we have here at the high school. Another important factor that an effective school has as part of one of its qualities is that the schools must be able to communicate with the public out there. We have tried this year to do a number of things to increase the communication that we currently have with our public, and our public is the parents of the high school students. We have started a high school newsletter that we send out every 9 weeks to parents, letting them know what's happening and what's coming up, because oftentimes high school kids don't take their papers home the way elementary kids do. So we find this is a viable means of communication with the parents in our community. We also have tried to provide some more opportunities for meetings in the evening to let parents know with regards to college selection, some other things that are coming up that their students are involved with. We've also tried to provide some opportunities for our students to participate and interact with businesses in the community. When you came in, you saw, or you may have seen that wrecked truck and that wrecked car out there, and you may have wondered, why is this wrecked car and wrecked truck out here in the front of the high school? If you took a look at the signboard, it says, "Keep the prom promise." Our kids have done an absolutely fantastic job of working with a local representative through the nationwide insurance company with the Prom Promise. Over 75% of our kids have signed a pledge, and on prom night they will not drink and drive. We would like them to never drink and drive, but at least we have that commitment from them on prom night that they will not drink and drive, and hopefully will be more safe. We do feel that is a responsibility to help them be safe in those areas as well. And one final quality that we have tried to incorporate into our program this year, Effective Schools research also says that an effective school has a real emphasis on academics. We feel athletics is important, academics is equally important. They're here to get an education, and we feel we must emphasize the academic part of our program here at the high school. And we've done that in a variety of ways. One of the most innovative ways that we're doing is that we have a real active group, approximately 25 to 30 folks, who have formed a West York area academic boosters club. That the point of their organization is not just to recognize A and B students. The real purpose of the organization is to find ways to motivate that D student to make a C, that C student to make a B. Because you and I know out there in the job market, you need to have the best possible skills, you need to have the best possible background to be competitive. Obviously, we have not incorporated all the qualities yet, but I think it's important that you know that we are working on them, and we are not striving to be better, we are striving to be the best. I hope that as a result of our presentations here by the elementary principal and by the junior high school principal, by myself, I hope that you do see that I think we do have a real strong administrative team. We share a common goal. That goal is to produce a product or to produce a child that is competitive when he or she graduates, either in the job market directly following graduation or at a tech school, at a four-year college. We feel that is our mission, and we take it.
This month in our student council, we've held a daffodil sale for the American Cancer Society. It was a great success. We sold all of our flowers before the lunch periods were over. We were glad to help out many benefit. We do a lot of benefit services throughout the community. That's a big part of our student council program. Also, this week we're fortunate to have the very first Spirit Week that West York Senior High School has conducted. It is a 4-day program. Today was the first. We had a hat day. Tomorrow we are following it up with a college sweats day. Thursday is our nerd day. And Friday is school spirit, followed by a school dance Friday evening, and also Schoolhouse Olympics. During this week, we're competing between the classes and faculty to raise school spirit and to let other schools know just how proud we are to be West York students. Also, this month, with prom coming around, we've been participating in the Prom Promise program. We've had 75% participation, which is fantastic for a school of our size. We're very proud to be part of this, and it is a great feat to get 75%. This makes us eligible to win prizes, and I guess it's through National Wide Insurance Company. And we're also holding a student council exchange this Friday with Spring Grove, where we're having 15 Spring Grove students come to visit our school, witness the student council meeting, and participate in our Spirit Week. So this month has been full of activity, and we hope to continue. Thank you.
Amy is our student council president, and she participates in the monthly meeting. If anything, it helps us remember why we are here, and that is to focus on the child. As Mr. Altman comes to the podium, I know he's a baseball fan. I know baseball season started. If you haven't seen Oriole Park at Camden Yards, what a great facility. While he's coming down, stretch if you want to.
And I'm going to jump around a little bit here, so if I go too fast, just wave your arms or something. I'd like you to turn to page 1 of the budget document. It says revenues, local, on it. And down at the bottom, you will see the 91-92 and the 92-93 tax rates, which are both 11.2 mils. So there's no change in the tax rate, which is the first question that everybody asks. Now, this budget is set up in terms of the state accounting system, and that requires a little bit of explanation. If you turn to page 3, the expenses, you will see that expenditures are broken down in 2 areas. First is what's called a function code. That's a 4-digit code, which shown on page 3 is
1,100 regular programs, elementary, secondary, 1,200 special programs, elementary, secondary, so on and so forth through the budget. A function code is basically a program area. This budget is not really expressive in some of the titles it gives to things, and sometimes not a very useful budget for a lot of purposes. But the function codes tend to be a bit artificial sometimes. They were created for the benefit of the Department of Education, not for the benefit of school districts. The numbers down the left-hand side of the page, 100s, 200s, 300s, and so on, are what's called an object code. The object code is the nature of the expense. And those are consistent throughout each function code: salaries, employee benefits, purchase services, and so on. There are also 4 columns shown here: 90, 91 actual, that's the last complete year that we have for actual figures; 91, 92 budget. This 91, 92 budget is the budget shown as a result of Act 25, which was, there were some changes made to the original budget in August last year because the state took forever to get a budget out to us. So those figures are shown there. 91, 92, projected figures, what I have estimated we're going to spend this year or take in the case of revenues or expenses. These are, admittedly in some areas, some guesses. Some areas it's a lot easier to estimate than others. And then the 92, 93, which is the current proposed budget. Now look at some major items. There are a great many changes in small items throughout the budget, 2,000 here, 1,000 there, or so on. But we'll look at the major items. In terms of revenues, the budget, you will go back to page 2. You will see an item down there at the bottom of the page, $150,000 under transfers from other funds. That is a transfer from the bond fund into the general fund, which is necessary to balance the budget at 11.2 mils. There are certain funds raised through a bond that you can spend. They are purchasing of equipment and building repairs and that kind of thing. The other area is in the area of, you can use it to pay off debt service. We've used $150,000 to pay off from the bond fund to pay off some of the debt service in this year's budget. The local revenues on page 1, and if you cross-index that back to the little page of comparisons, you will see that we have local revenues an increase of about $390,000. That's primarily in the areas of current real estate tax as a result of additional real estate assessment, and the area of earned income tax. In terms of state revenues, we have some significant reductions there. The instructional subsidy is going to be reduced by about $96,000. The special education will be down about $85,000. So that's a total state reductions of about $187,000, or a net gain, not counting the $150,000 from the bond fund, of about $204,000. One item that I would mention, it's not a big item, at least not this year, but it will be of some interest farther on. This year we're going to attempt to do what's called a revenue anticipation note. We've done these in the past with a fair degree of success. And put simply, a revenue anticipation note is a situation where you borrow an amount of money at a low rate, you reinvest it at a higher rate. At the end of the year, you pay it back and pocket the difference. Essentially, that's how it works. We've done these in the past. We've been very successful with them. We were not able to do one in 91, 92 because we borrowed in excess of $5 million. We're not permitted to do this kind of thing. We borrow in excess of that for a current year. But that should produce this year about $15,000 of additional revenue. In the area of reductions, major reductions, as I said, there are a number of minor reductions throughout the budget, or smaller amounts. I guess no reductions are minor when you're looking for reductions. First of all, we have decided to go with no budgetary reserve. You will look on page 9. Item 5900 at the bottom of the page. Last year, we put $130,000 in as a budgetary reserve. And the reason for this was quite simply because we did not have either of the contracts settled. And no one has yet suggested to me an effective way to budget when the major part of your budget is unknown, as it was at that time. This year, with the contract settled, the reserve is probably not necessary as long as we stay within our budget in other areas. We should not have any problem with that. Also, throughout this budget, though it does not appear in any one particular spot, there's a reduction of about $50,000, which is the result of a moratorium on conferences. Two items of that, or two elements of that. One is, first, the cost of conferences themselves, which can get up about $30,000-$40,000. The other is the reduced cost of substitute teachers that will not be required because nobody's going to conferences, they'll be in the classroom, and we'll need substitutes for them. The state retirement rate is also reduced from 7.45% to 7.12%, and that's reflected throughout the 200s items, the employee benefits throughout the budget. Those are based strictly on salaries. In terms of salaries themselves, that's the one of about 3 or 4 areas where there is an increase in expenses in terms of your types of expense. Even that figure is not as high as it might be because no new positions are budgeted for. And in some cases, we will not replace some as people leave. So there probably will be a net reduction in the number of people. Also, with the closing of Martin, we'll have a significant reduction in energy costs. 91-92 was sort of a bubble year with the Martin building being open and with additional space to be required to heat and light in the other buildings. There was a higher amount of energy costs than will be realized in the following year. That should be significantly reduced in 92-93. And that you'll see show up mostly in the 600 series back on page 7 under the 600s. We're going from $257,000 to $232,000 in terms of fuel oil costs and natural gas costs. And the electric costs will be down a little bit. Also cutting down on some special ed programs, and that will show up in the 300 series again throughout the budget. We will be reducing some of the IU expenses for a gifted program by a bit. As far as if you now turn to the last section where it shows the increases and the decreases, and it's the third page of that, which shows increases and decreases by major object to give an idea of where the increases and the decreases are throughout the budget. One of the problems with this function business is that it does tend to take expenses and chop them up into different areas. It's a little hard to get a handle on what the total costs are sometimes. The major area of increase, of course, is in salaries. That's a $369,000 increase, and that's simply a matter of taking all the salaries that we know of, reducing it by people who we know are not going to be here next year, adding them up, and that's the total that you get. And that will be the increase in salaries. Employee benefits is also up by about $33,000, not as high as it might have been had it not been for the reduction in the retirement rate. The only other areas outside of that where there are increases are in the 500s, and that is largely a result of the increase in transportation costs. The two elements of that. The first one is that the transportation contract has a daily increase built into it. The second element is it will be having a longer school year. More days will result in a greater transportation cost. And finally, there's an increase on the 800 series under other objects. And here's where the tax anticipation note comes into effect that I mentioned earlier. If you factor out the tax anticipation note, there's actually a reduction of about $9,000 there. When we budget for the tax anticipation note, we must show both the expense and the revenue, not the net figure. So sometimes it tends to bend your 800s a little bit out of shape, make it look a little bit higher than it actually is. If we reach a point where we would find it would not be profitable for the district to do a tax anticipation note, we simply wouldn't do one, and we wouldn't have any expense there. Now, there's some possible areas where this current budget, as it sits here, could be reduced, but at this point we don't know about them. They are talked about, they are promised by the governor or somebody, But my feeling towards state revenue has always been, in fact, state promises in general has always been never buy your tickets till you hear the train whistle. And I haven't heard the train whistle yet. The governor says that he is going to reduce the retirement rate to 6.195, but as yet that has not happened. So we have not reflected that change in the budget. It's still at 7.12, which is the official rate as far as the state retirement system is concerned. There's also some talk that they may reinstate the subsidy to the 91-92 level. Again, who knows what's going to happen on that. Maybe they will, but at this point they have not, and we're going with the figures that we know are correct, at least as of this moment. We may be able to reduce some of our medical insurance costs through a self-funded insurance program. I'm looking into that right now, and it does appear as though we might have the possibility of maybe knocking $30,000 or $40,000 off of the medical insurance costs. But that takes a little while to calculate, trying to go back through all our past medical experience and see if that is a possibility. Also going to try to reduce the cost of some copier maintenance by replacing some of the inefficient dead machines, of which there are a number floating about, replacing them with some machines that are a little more efficient than some of the ones that we have. And finally, we, of course, may sell the Martin building. Now, it would be rather foolish to budget for the sale of that building when it hasn't been sold. It may be sold in June, it may be sold in December, it may never be sold at all. At the time when that happens, of course, we'll be able to take that into account. But as yet, that has not happened. Those are the major items in the budget. There are all manner of comparisons that you can make, and you should be able to check most of them on your budget forms there and on your comparisons back at the end of it. Okay.
Board, your superintendent's report, please read it. It's an outline form. There are a number of items that require you to get back to Mrs. Wadley in terms of confirmation. That concludes the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you for being patient. What we'd like to do now is I had planned to go into a number of items. In essence of time, I sense that maybe you people would like to speak. Let's open the floor up to your comments. If you would like, once you run out, if you want to know what else was addressed to us as questions, I'll be happy to approach it that way. But let's hear something from you. We'll be... Yes, sir.
May I go see the...
Sure, you can use the one right in front of you.
President Miller, members of the board, school administration, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ron Dixon. I reside at 2009 Dairy Road, York. I've been a member of the school district for approximately 35 years. I've had 2 children go through the system. I was quite satisfied with the academics at that time. However, my particular area of concern this evening, I'm limited to 5 minutes, so I'm going to have to capsulize on what I have to say. My particular agenda has to do with finances and taxes. As of the March the 17th meeting I attended there, and voiced my concerns concerning the balance of the bond that was floated back in April of '91. There was a balance, I think, at the end of March around $4 million. I think now the budget presents a balance of approximately $1,300,000. It was my understanding through various rumors and information that I obtained that several special interest groups within the school system were concerned about upgrading, doing major renovations to our sports complex. I appealed in behalf of the district taxpayers to the board to reconsider spending excessive additional funds to do a major revamping of the entire sports facility. We suggest that you hold the line on major spending and repair or maintain the present facilities on an as-needed basis, considering the safety and needs of the students and athletes. However, immediately after thanking us for our comments and input, Without so much as a discussion by the board or comment or without slightest hesitation, a motion was approved by the board to hire an interim consultant $1,000 to do a feasibility study concerning the general upgrade of the entire sports facility. On behalf of the taxpayers of this district, we consider this to be a blatant disregard of our concerns, to be a direct affront and an insult to the integrity of our concerns. Last week at our membership meeting, I was approached by the coach of the field and track program here at the school. He presented me with a bag of stones, indicating to me that the track was in deplorable condition. When asking him how long this had been going on, he indicated, responding to me, he wasn't giving information, he was responding to my questions. Approximately 6 years ago, new construction was contracted to revamp the track field. He at that time indicated to the individual that the system that we were using wasn't appropriate in this particular area, that the track wouldn't hold up. He told me he was told on his own business by a board member, name unmentioned, this is 6 years ago. And at that he put it to rest. And now he also indicated, when I asked him in regard to spending money and hiring an engineering consultant, as to spending the monies, if they better utilized, perhaps bring a contractor and repair what needs to be repaired. He indicated that this made much more sense to him. And I also feel the coaching staff, concerning any upgrading or revamping of any sports facility, I think the coaching staff should have some input into what's going to be done, how it's going to be done. I think they have some expertise besides the consultant or an engineer in a matter of this nature. Now, the preliminary budget that I was presented with back at the business meeting, the budget identified it as a sports complex. However, the present budget, the title was changed to School and Community Fitness Facility. Now, it appears as quite a community-spirited title, I agree. However, regardless of the format, for whatever reason, to proceed as planned and ignore our concerns, we would consider this to be nothing less than wasteful and irresponsible use of our tax dollars. And one other thing I have, the administrative salary increases. In view of our recent construction expenditures, which I believe were in excess of $17 billion throughout the school district, the added cost of our teachers' new contract for the next 3 years, I believe it's approximately 21% increase, about $15,000. In conjunction with the ongoing economic recession, considering further additional expenditures of approximately $1 million to replace the boiler system in the high school, replace the roofs of several school buildings, and perform the required routine maintenance. On behalf of the taxpayers of this district, we strongly request the board not to grant any salary or benefit increases to the entire administrative staff at this time. We feel they are already substantially compensated with their present salaries and overall benefits. And to again ignore our appeals in this matter, we would consider this to be, again, wasteful and irresponsible. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, on behalf of the Taxpayer Association of West York Area District, I thank you for your consideration in this matter of mutual concern. Thank you for your time, and sincerely hope that you received our message this evening in these two particular areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Before the next person comes up, I would just, if you don't mind, make a comment back, because I think it's important that we all understand what reference point we're coming from. And I'll try to recreate in the sequence that you presented them. The first one had to do with the excess amount of the bond fund being used for athletic facilities. There are a couple of points to be made there. One is that one of the reasons that initiated a whatever it is, sports complex study, facility study, whatever, it's involving, so that you're all aware, a couple of features. One is a fitness room, which is a weight room, currently housed in the bottom of the Martin building. That was in the plans quite a while ago, that when we get rid of the Martin building, something had to be done about a fitness center. So that's the one issue. The other issue is the track, which Mr. Dixon mentioned. And in fact, as I said before, prior to this night, the only other group other than the taxpayers group that ever came to us was a group of coaches, students, and parents who said our track is an atrocious situation and we need to revisit that and get a new track, and that was what precipitated the investigation into what we're looking at now. So I want you to know that we didn't come up, just generate this idea on our own. This was presented to us. We felt responsible to respond to that group that came and said, you need to do something about the track. We had accidents, liability issues, those kind of things that we should address. So I just wanted you to understand the reference point. The issue of the study. This is a difficult time, and I'm empathizing with you. I understand what you're saying. As a board, though, we're responsible to try to analyze the whole picture, and all we're doing by commissioning a study was to say, what are the options? What is there? And we were very fortunate to have happened what did on this building program. A recession in the school district is in fact a plus because we got tremendous benefits from the quotes on the building construction. And that's what enabled that. But I don't think that's necessarily tied to this. The question is, do we ever need facilities upgrade? And if we do, we ought to know what they are so that we can evaluate them now while this opportunity exists. I think the one thing we've shown is that we, in the budget, as Mr. Alderman mentioned, we took $150,000 of that extra in the bond fund and applied it to the current package in the budget. When we get finished with this analysis, we don't know what will happen, but I'll tell you two things that will happen. One is it'll be done right, and two is you all have an opportunity to hear it and see it before a decision is made. So we're just saying the cost invested at this point to get a complete look, because this is not just sports and athletics. We have a physical education curriculum at this school that is tied in with our academic curriculum. So we need to try to be objective and say, what are the options? We could say to you, scrap all the studies, and we'll get another group in here next week that will say, what are you people doing? Don't you care? What about our students? What about their facilities? We want to have an opportunity to get the information from which we can make an intelligent decision. And in that decision will be a group like this. We'll come and we'll present what the options are, explain the costs, tell you what the differences are, and then hear your feedback just like we are tonight. And I assure you, you'll hear feedback from another side that says our students and our coaches and so on have some interest as well. So anyhow, that's the first part, and I just wanted to make that clear. The second part had to do with the administrative salaries, making that zero. That certainly is an option. All I can say at this point is that as a board, we appoint a committee of 3 people, and they go off and on their own. It's part of a requirement. Someone mentioned the name Act 93. We must, as a school board, deal with the administration group of people. We sit with them, hear their needs and desires, and then from that we decide whether or not that is valid in order to give them a benefit. In the past, their requests have been some fringe benefit types of things. And as I recall this time, when they came, they did not have a package of things because they realized it was tight. The committee came back to the board and recommended that we do cut it back, that we not make it 7, 7.5, or whatever it was in the past, but we knock it down to what would be respected as a reasonable cost of living and a little bit of performance involved. Because I do hope you understand, those of you involved with our school district, that we are in the midst of major changes, and specifically tonight, the programs that are going on in the schools have required tremendous amounts of effort. So that at this point in time, the review committee came back to the board and said, we recommend the 4.5% that we would now put into the budget as a pot from which then we would reward those people. So right or wrong, that's the way the process is, and at this point, the budget that you see in front of you does have that piece of information in, and tonight we will be voting on the preliminary budget. In other words, what we do is we have to vote that then it gets posted and people have time to comment and ask questions and that kind of thing. So that's the status of those 2 issues. How about someone else? Yes, sir.
Jim Paul, 1975 Trolley Road. Does the strength of the objection of the Taxpayers Association have any bearing on the carrying of this 4-point-something increase? Our objection to it, expressed by the number of people that are showing their objection, does this have any bearing on it, or is this an automatic approval of the 4-point-something?
Well, does it have any bearing? Yeah, I think it has. I think the 4.5% that the committee has come back to is a responsible number. You might say that zero responsible number for people who have performed, who are new in the position, who have made changes to increase the benefit of this, the value of the education, which we talked about before. If we come back to you and said 6-7%, we ought to give them what the teachers are getting, I'd say you should call us and throw us all off the board. That would be irresponsible. I'm sorry?
That might be
So, yes, I think it does have an impact. How about other comments? Yes, sir?
Robert Everly, 2120 Twin Brooks Drive. How many of the members of the board up there realize that the school district is sitting on a gold mine? Now, what I'm referring to is the York Fairgrounds. Back in the late 30s or early 40s, all the admission beats in the fairgrounds was in the West York district, with the exception of one. It was either the city of York or the city school district put an amusement tax on. The year that they put the amusement tax on, they closed the Madison Avenue gate. The following year, that Madison Avenue gate was moved back to the position it's in now, it's in West York district. Now, for just for example, 400,000 is admission in 9 days. That's $300 admission. That comes up to $1,200,000. 10% of that comes up to $120,000. Your hot ride, street ride association, when they have their shows in there, 3,000 admission at $7 admission is up to $21,000. So there's another $2,100 that you could get. So in 2 events of it at the fairground, you have $122,100, which to me is a nice revenue. And looking at this one sheet here, I see there's 3 school districts in Adams County have an amusement tax or an admission tax. So I think to be fair with the taxpayers, it would be a good thing to take into consideration and look into. I approached, several years ago, I approached a school board member, and he gave me the excuse, well, if he can put a admission tax on, we had to charge the admission tax for football games, basketball games, the wrestling matches. I said, hey, that's all money coming into the school district. Well, when I told him that, he didn't answer. So I think that it would be a good thing to check into. Like I said, just 2 things, $122,100 is a nice little pot of money to get in for maybe 12 days. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And that obviously was news to me, and we can follow up. We will follow up and find out what that is. Yes, sir.
On your budget report, when the principal list, it's been a while since I've been to school, but I'd like to know, what is this distance learning?
Okay.
For $300,000, what does that mean?
Distance learning is something that's very new technology, and that's just in there as something to be looked into, because there are some benefits to it in terms of cost savings. We saw a presentation up at the Lincoln Intermediate Unit a month ago, and what it essentially is a big screen television in a room and an instructor might, say, be in Central, and he will have monitors, and he can teach a course maybe in some elective, say French, and he can put that in front of him and teach 4 different schools at the same time. French is a bad example. Something would be kind of unique, like maybe someone wants to take a unique language. Russian is a good example, where we wouldn't have the staff to teach Russian, but somewhere they would have a staff that one person could teach 5 schools, so it would eliminate the need for additions to staff. And that item in the budget is for equipment that would be required if we went into that. But I will tell you honestly, that's something that was just being looked at. I think within the next week, a couple of our people are going to New York State to see it in action, to find out if it has merit. But it would be something that the community of districts would have to get involved in order to make it meaningful. Yes, sir?
Well, that's the case. Maybe we can eliminate a lot of cases just for having this kind of system.
Sure. I will say one thing, there are some disadvantages with distance learning. I have experience of someone who I know who sat through them, and that's what would have to be evaluated, is if the student is looking at a screen and not interacting with a person. They've done some things to make it, the person in the room that has screens in front of them, you can raise your hand in West York at the screen, and he can see you and ask you the question. So they've made some improvements, but that's the long-term. That is the long-term trend, is to reduce staff by adding those screens. Yes, sir.
Mr. Miller, board members, Roger Miller is my name. I live at 1931 Colorado Road. I've been living there for 25 years. We've had 4 children through the West York School System. Concerning the sexual harassment, as you know, is a very serious charge to be placed against any individual. Therefore, the following question: faculty and staff been adequately instructed as to what sexual harassment is in the daily dealing with students, and what penalties will be if any member of the faculty or staff is guilty of such a charge? How has that instruction been given? Does the message that sexual harassment is illegal and will not be tolerated, has that come through loud and clear? Has the administration had any reported incidents of sexual harassment, and how have they been handled? How have they handled these incidents? Have the students been instructed on how to report incidents of sexual harassment without fear of retaliation by the guilty party? Have parents been informed on how to report such incidents if their child comes home and reports being involved in sexual harassment incidents?
Thank you. Dr. Glenn, do you want to address that with regard to the operation here?
Thank you. Excellent question. When it comes to sexual harassment, is dealing with morals and ethics, and forget the chain of command. Call the superintendent directly if you feel comfortable in doing that. The way we handle it, if we do get an allegation of sexual harassment, we've done an investigation. And that means getting outside people to help us do the investigation. We check with the legal people. We check with the police enforcement, and we do a very thorough job. What we need are names, dates, and places. It's not down in writing and hasn't happened. We do have to give people in this business due process. They have that coming by law, and if we're able to get such indications substantiated, we will move. In terms of notifying the staff, at staff meeting, we have covered this completely with our administrators, who in turn go back to the building level and review sexual harassment with the respective faculties, what it is, what the penalty will be. We currently, at the board level, are in the process of developing a sexual harassment policy. As a matter of fact, it was in place during the Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill hearings. So we take it very seriously, and anybody in this room, if you're willing to stick your neck out and testify, that's what we need. We could use your help too.
Thank you, Dr. Lynn. other comments? Yes, sir.
Mr. Miller, board administrators, my name is Gary Layton. I reside at 2753 Brookmore Drive. I've been in the district since 1967. A couple questions I have about the budget, if possible. Maybe Mr. Altman can chime in. Account 2360. Travel for the superintendent is budgeted for $2,500. Books and periodicals up from $750 to $3,000. That's a big jump there. And dues and fees from $2,000 to $2,500. I'd like a little explanation if possible on that.
The first one.
2360, line item number.
The superintendents or any other employees travel is the number of miles they travel times the mileage rate. So all employees are eligible for it. And we've budgeted an amount that's basically an arbitrary figure. We don't know if you'll drive that much, but put in a figure that we hope will cover it. We can make it any figure we want to. It is basically an arbitrary figure that's a figure that I was